Okay, a bit of neuroanatomy here. What I'm gonna talk? I'm gonna talk about the compression of the cauda equina and the trunk of spinal nerve. So first, of course, I would like to start with an illustration of the structure. Just find the pen. Yeah, here. Okay, so I already have the pen here, and let me also get this one to write down. Compression of the cauda equina and trunk of spinal nerve. And trunk of spinal nerve. Okay, so then I'm going to start with this part here, the body of the vertebra. Okay, the body of the vertebra. And what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna add other features related with the body of the vertebra. And it doesn't need to be perfect. You probably know very well that the anatomy is not something symmetric. And this part here will be important for us. Let me just use this pen. And then let me add some dot lines. Okay, and here we have a few other things that will also be interesting for us. This here, this part here, okay, this one, and let me also add this thing here. Okay. So, what else? Let me just label the parts. We have the first here. Okay, this one, compression, representing the compression of the cauda equina. Let me just check here. Compression. Of cauda equina. Compression of cauda equina. And then okay, this part here. This one here. Compression of the cauda equina may be compressed by posterior prolapse of the intervertebral disc, which is common between L4, L5, or between L5 and S1. So let me just write here. This part. Okay, spinal nerves. Spinal nerves. Okay, so, oops. Okay. Let me do something. I think that is better to visualize. Okay, what else? We have the trunk of spinal nerve. The trunk of spinal nerve. And or also its dorsal root ganglion. So let me do this. Dorsal it's actually dorsal root ganglion. And the trunk of spinal nerve here. This may be compressed by posterolateral prolapse of the intervertebral disc, which is something that can happen when there is a compression of the cauda equina. Morning. Okay. So when you talk about compression of the cauda equina, I'm referring to the bundle of spinal nerves roots that extend from the lower end of the spinal cord which are lower end of the spinal cord, okay, called equina, and typically below the L2, okay, L2, and these nerve roots are basically responsible for innervating the lower limbs, pelvic organs, and also the perineal region. So let me just write down here that these nerve roots are responsible called equina. These nerve roots these nerve roots are responsible for innervating, are responsible for innervating the lower limbs. I'm gonna abbreviate lower limbs, pelvic organs, abbreviating pelvic organs, and also perineal region. Perineal region. Thanks, Evanzinho. Okay, perineal region. The compression also, the compression of the cauda equina usually can occur due to posterior herniation or prolapse of an intervertebral disc. I'm just talking about another topic. Easy. The topic that I mentioned before, I'm gonna be talking later today, around 5:30ish. So then I'm gonna talk about that book that I mentioned. Right now I'm just talking about compression of the cauda equina. I decided to make this video. So yes, and I was mentioning, thank you, that the compression of the cauda equina can usually occur due to posterior herniation or prolapse of an intervertebral disc, which is quite common, observed at the level of the lumbar spine, around 8.4 or 8.5 S1. When I say 8.4, 8.5, I'm mentioning the lumbar vertebra 4, lumbar vertebra 5 in between, and lumbar vertebra 5 and sacral vertebra 1, okay, which where the intervertebral discs are particularly susceptible to degeneration and herniation. And the reason why is because it's the end of the lower spine, the end of the most flexible part of the spine, and is the area where we have a curve that also can create some influence in this kind of condition that we find in some people that suffer from herniated disc or prolapse of intervertebral disc. Now, the posterior disc prolapse, which is usually towards the, let me just take something to show you. Yeah, I just need to find the lumbar one. We got the cervical one, the thoracic one, and I need to find the lumbar. I got it. Just a second. Here. Okay. So this is the posterior part. If I position the vertebrae like this, it will naturally go to the, yeah, so pretty much like this. Okay, and the posterior part is this one, towards the spinal process. Now I was mentioning that the posterior disc prolapse usually occurs when the nucleus pulposus, which I don't have any other thing to show you here as an example. Let's say this one. Okay, the nucleus pulposus, which is the gel-like center of the disc, protrudes through the annulus fibrosus, which is the outer ring of the disc. So the disc, imagining that this is the nucleus pulposus, is wrapped by a sequence of fibers like this that are disposed in different directions, like this, like this, like this, and then like this. Okay, and protrudes through the annulus fibrosus and compress the nerve roots of the cauda equina, which are the nerves that comes from the end of the spinal cord, this here. Okay, if you see, here is the conus medullaris, which is the end of the spinal cord, and here we have the cauda equina, innervating lower limbs, pelvic organs, and also perineal region. What else? And the compression usually leads to symptoms like saddle anesthesia, which is the loss of the sensation in the saddle area of perineum, buttocks, and inner thighs. Bowel and bladder dysfunction, which is, I think that is when is the most severe case, usually affecting the control of the bowel movements and urination. And the lower, another thing that can be observed is the lower extremity weakness, usually leading to paralysis in the legs, depending of how severe it can be. Okay, pain as well, and sensory changes. Usually this severe pain radiates down to the legs and is accompanied by numbness and tingling. So you can suspect that the person is maybe suffering from a prolapsed disc or a herniated disc. Now, the compression of the spinal nerve trunk and or dorsal root ganglion here. Okay, this part here is when the trunk of spinal nerve, the trunk usually consists of the ventral and dorsal roots that emerge from the spinal cord. Let me just come back to another illustration that I made. No worries at all. Yeah. Let me just find the other illustration. It's okay. This one. Here we have the dorsal root ganglion, and here we have the ventral root of the spinal nerve. Okay, actually the dorsal root of spinal nerve, ventral root, always in the dorsal, we find the dorsal root ganglion. This one is sensory, this one is motor. but at the level of the trunk, okay, which I mentioned before is composed by sensory and motor neurons, is usually when you are going to see these different signs that might indicate the compression of this area. Okay, what else? Oh, returning here. Okay. Well, and as I mentioned here, okay, around here, the compression of the spinal nerve trunk or the dorsal root ganglion usually occurs more because of the posterolateral herniation or prolapse of an intervertebral disc. And this type of disc prolapse is characterized by the disc material protruding laterally and posteriorly. It can move laterally, can move forward, it can even sequestrate or migrate to the space between, to this space here, the vertebral canal, which is really, really bad. And but you need to discuss with the doctor that is attending your client, you, or if you want to know more, you just need to make like a deep you need to learn and understand the exams that you received from the GP or whatever. Okay, what else? The posterolateral disc as well is more common, I mentioned before, at the level of L4, L5, L5S1, but can also occur at other lumbar segments depending on the anatomy and biomechanics applied to the spine. So sometimes what can happen is during a specific exercise, the herniate disc will happen in another part of the spine, or the prolapse as well, or even after a trauma. Okay, this is something that can affect at different levels, can lead to different levels of injury. And usually the manifestation of this type of compression also include radicular pain. A radicular pain is a sharp and shooting pain along the distribution of the affected nerve, quite often extending into the lower extremities, okay? I mentioned before about the muscle weakness in this specific muscle groups is supplied by the compressed nerve in special. Sensory deficit as well, it can happen, causing numbness, tingling, or even changing the sensation in the dermatomal distribution of the affected nerve. I still have to do an illustration of the dermatomes, but yeah, when I do the illustration, you will have a better idea, because I will return to the topic as soon as I do this illustration, because I think that's quite interesting. You can learn a lot of things, small things, understanding where are the dermatomes in the body. Reflexes will change, altering deep tendon reflexes in special, such as diminished or absent of knee and ankle jerks. And what I can add to this part here, what else I can add? Diagnosis. Usually, compression of the caudequine or spinal nerve trunk is typically diagnosed using imaging studies such as MRI, CTs, which can help you, the physician, to visualize the exactly location and the and the extent of disc prolapse and nerve compression, and how serious is the condition. Knowing how serious is the condition, you can you can choose the best approach, or the most direct approach to address the specific condition. Yeah, so it's helpful. You don't need it necessarily to have this kind of well, it's helpful, but you can have an idea if you have this kind of condition just by using simple mechanical tests, and then you can. But to know the where is it, the gravity, probably will be necessary MRI or CT scans. Now, treatment for this kind of condition usually depends of the, as I mentioned, on the severity of symptoms, and also the degree of compression. There are a lot of if we break the things in parts, you are going to find different approaches for different parts. And conservative treatments may usually include physical therapy, pain management, anti-inflammatory medications. I have a prolapsed disc between my L5 S1. What I usually do, I usually address with exercise. The best thing that you can do is find someone that will help you to build up strength and mobility, okay, and help you to switch off some specific muscles that are hyperactive, because this can also influence the area that was affected, and you probably know very well that if you have an injury, probably other areas around the injury will be tight as well. So we need to allow some space to the body heal, okay. And what else? There, of course, there are severe cases where usually they suggest surgical intervention, but I've been having contact with some people that are even in a more extreme condition, they opted for conservative treatments. So, and then they do a little bit of everything, but they do with I believe that they are much more aware of their whole bodies, because in this kind of condition you usually need to be extremely careful. Of course, that when affects the bowel system, it's quite complicated. And there are, when you have an early diagnosis, and and you know what you are having there, it will help you to plan better the approach, the treatment, and what you're gonna do during the in long term, okay? Because you need to look at your, after discover that you have something like that, you need to be able to stick with something probably for the rest of your life. And this is what I have to show you about this part in specific. Okay. Which kind of treatments can help with this? Do you mean by which kind of treatments you can use to address this type of condition? I usually recommend exercise. I think that exercise is the best approach, easy. Exercise focusing on strength and mobility. And you can also, I'm not sure how they say in English, but in Portuguese we call eutonia. Eutonia, I'm gonna explain em português. Eutonia é quando tu pega e ensina o corpo a relaxar. Prática de eutonia, né? Eutonos, né? Eutonia. Então, tem práticas específicas para tu aliviar a tensão de determinadas áreas. Algumas pessoas falam sobre conexão miofacial entre uma parte do corpo e outra. E aí eles sugerem, para esse tipo de condição, fortalecer glúteos, né, primeiro, porque por algum motivo a energia foi projetada para a região lombar, fortalecer glúteos, fortalecer adutores, e também focar no relaxamento da mandíbula e da base da nuca. Porque daí pode também afetar aqui. Uma mudança na curvatura da cervical afeta diretamente a curvatura lombar, assim como vice-versa. Então, é basicamente isso. Eu não sei, deixa eu ver, não sei nem quanto tempo deu aqui. Porque daí eu vou usar esse vídeo depois. Lá no YouTube. Se o hacker não hackear meu YouTube. Eu não te contei essa história, né? Quer subir um pouquinho agora? Até eu tô pensando em já começar a falar um pouco sobre o livro. Pra ser sincero.